Hi, hello, I hope you're doing well. If you're new here, my name is Khadija and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in May. This was a really weird reading month for me. I read a lot of books this month, including 2 lit fics, which I haven't read literary fiction in a very long time. And I also read like a contemporary romance, I read some adult fantasy, but even though I read a lot, the majority of the books that I read were either letdowns or unmemorable. Even the standout reads that I have this month, they still didn't make me feel passionate emotions. I don't think I read a book this month that I've just been thinking about nonstop. Either it's just there or it was a little disappointing, or like I'm interested, but I'm not like, oh my god, this is life-changing. So it's a weird month, but at least I read a lot. So for some stats, I read 4 YA fantasy books, I read 3 adult fantasy, I read 1 romance, and then I read 2 literary fiction books. So I read 10 books this month. I also had 1 DNF, and I actually debated on if I should share my DNFs in my reading wrap-ups, but then I was like, it's part of my reading experience, so why would I not share it? So I am going to include a little bit at the end where I talk about the book that I DNF'd. Also, I'm going to talk about these books in the order that I read them. So yeah, let's get started. So the first book is The Secrets of Blackthorn Hall by Cassandra, Clare, and I actually read this at the very end of April. I was kind of like wrapping up my Shadowhunters reading journey. I couldn't include it in my March and April reading wrap up because at that point I had already filmed it because I didn't think I was going to read anything else in like the last 2 days of April. So I'm adding it here. I know it's like cheating, but it's fine. This is a really quick novella that takes place in between the Dark Artifices and the upcoming trilogy, The Wicked Powers. So it takes place like a couple of years after the Dark Artifices leaves off, and we follow characters mostly from that trilogy as they try to figure out like the secrets of Blackthorn Hall. There is a lot that has occurred in Blackthorn Hall throughout the course of these books. It is very haunted and very run down, and there's just a lot going on. So in the process, they have to figure out a haunting. There are also a lot of references to characters from previous trilogies. There's a lot of character appearances in present time. There is also a lot of setup for the next and final trilogy. It's kind of like a little morsel, like a little treat for fans in between. That's kind of like the vibe that I got from it. And apparently it was a Kickstarter first until it eventually went to traditional publishing, so that's interesting. I think it was like 300 pages, so it really wasn't that long, and it was partly illustrated. I had a really fun time. I read it super fast. It was written through the format of letters. I don't know what it is about these books, but they just make me feel like I'm 16 again. I love these characters so much and I need them all to be okay. But yeah, I think it's a fun little add-on, and I would only recommend it if you are somewhat familiar with this world, specifically if you've read The Dark Artifices, because if you haven't, I really don't think this is going to do anything for you. So that was The Secrets of Blackthorn Hall by Cassandra, Clare. Then I read Release Me by tahereh mafi, which is a YA dystopian, and it is the second book in a Shatter Me spin-off series called The New Republic. The Shatter Me series is such a guilty pleasure for me. I read all of them last year. It was just so much fun to binge read. I also really love the This Woven Kingdom series, so basically anything that tahereh puts out, I will read. The Shatter Me books to me are not high literature by any means, but they just scratch that dystopian itch, and they're always exactly what I expect them to be. I'm never like disappointed because I know exactly what to expect, if that makes any sense. It's just entertainment. Because this is the second book in the series, I can't really talk too much about the plot because that would spoil a lot in case you are interested in reading these. So I'm just gonna give you like a quick synopsis of the first book, which is called Watch Me. So the series is set 10 years after the events of Shatter Me. Juliet and Aaron Warner, who are the main characters, they take down this tyrannical regime called the Reestablishment, and 10 years later their society is now called the New Republic. But there's this place called Ark Island, which is like the last remnant of the Reestablishment, so they have been trying to breach to infiltrate this piece of the final piece of the Reestablishment. It's like the only part of North America that hasn't been reformed. No one has been able to breach it. Until one day we follow our main character James, who is the younger brother of Aaron, and in the Shatter Me series he was either 8 or 10. I can't remember the exact age, so he's either like 18 or around 20 in this series, but he is the main character now. So James decides that he's going to be the one to infiltrate Ark Island, and because he's the main character, he does so successfully, even though it's insane and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you just gotta accept it and roll with it. So on this island, James finds out that it's actually much worse than they ever thought it was, because everyone is being monitored by artificial intelligence. So essentially every single move that people make, every thought that they have is completely surveilled. And when I was reading this, I was like, low-key, this doesn't even sound that dystopian anymore. There's this network called the Nexus that everyone on this island is connected to in their brains. And again, like it can control and like read everyone's minds and thoughts and actions. So it's kind of like really creepy. Turns out the reestablishment is planning something more dangerous and intense than anyone could have ever imagined. Who could have seen that coming? So that's where Rosabelle comes in, and she is our female main character. She is essentially an assassin, and she is the reestablishment's most dangerous tool. She is not above committing any crime. Her and James have an encounter on Ark Island, and the rest is history. This book could have been an email with how little happened in it, but that was completely expected, and I inhaled it regardless, like it was nobody's business. I read it in practically one sitting. I don't know what it is about her writing. I just can't put her books down, for better or worse. It's the kind of book that I would have been obsessed with if I was a teenager. That's the vibe. So much of this book and the book before was just like repeated phrases of how in love with Rosabelle James is, and vice versa eventually, which is fine because again, I expected no less and I had fun reading it. But it does get to a point. I think this is set to be 4 or 5 books because she announced the 3rd book, Surprise, coming out this fall, and it's definitely not the last book. It totally could have been a duology. This book could have been combined with Watch Me and everything would have been fine. But I can't lie, I'll be seated. I will read whatever she puts out because I have fun with these. They are just pure entertainment for me, and I enjoyed binging it, and I really don't have much else to say about this book specifically. It was just exactly what I expected it to be, and it satisfied my teen dystopian craving. That was Release Me by Tahereh Mafi. Then I read The Swan's Daughter by Roshani Chokshi, which is a standalone young adult fantasy, and I was so happy to read this, honestly, because I have just been reading so many series. It was so whimsical and creative, and I had so much fun with it. So in this book, we follow Demelza, who is a Verita swan, and she is one of 7 daughters, the daughter of Araminta, who is a Verita swan, and the daughter of Prava, who is a wizard. In this world, a Verita swan has the ability to bring out the truth in people through their songs. So no one can resist speaking the truth after hearing their songs. There's also this problem where if a Verita swan falls in love, a necklace forms on them, more like a collar almost, and there's like a little keyhole, and the key is given to the person that they've fallen in love with, and it's like magically given to them, so you can't really like take it away from them because it'll just reappear in their hands. And if you have the key, you have the ability to control them, and that mostly entails like controlling their form, so whether they appear to be like a swan or like a human. Demelza is kind of the ugly duckling, so she can't really sing very well. She isn't as pretty as her sisters. She just can't really help out her father that much. So her sisters are out there doing his bidding, and she's just kind of there on the side for a very long time, for like most of her life, until one day her father is like, oh, I think I finally found a purpose for you. And it's a really crazy thing that he wants to do to her. So she has no choice but to flee. She flees to the Isle of Melis. I don't know if I'm saying that right, where Prava cannot follow. And this is where she meets Prince Eris. And at this very moment, the kingdom is announcing this tournament for Eris's hand. So there are all these young women competing for his hand. Think of it like The Bachelor or like The Selection. Eris figures out very quickly that she is a Verita swan, and so he strikes a deal with her where he's like, if you use your song to help figure out who is being truthful, because he's a prince, there's a lot of people who want to assassinate him. So he's like, I don't know who's being truthful and I don't know who's actually trying to harm me. So if you could use your song to help me figure out who is being authentic, so that I can find a bride, that would be great. And in exchange, I will give you a safe place to stay while you're running from your father. And she's like, sounds great. This book was so whimsical. Like, it had the vibes of an old animated Barbie fantasy movie, and I mean that in the best way. Like, that is like the highest compliment from me. But at the same time, it had this darker undertone to it, specifically the folklore, and I feel like the author balanced that so well. There were a lot of really unique elements that made the story feel fresh, even though it did feel like a classic fairy tale. I would recommend it if you're looking for a standalone classic fairy tale with a combination of whimsy and betrayal, but I will say that it was very, very, very flowery, like very purple prose. I am not typically a big fan of flowery writing. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I'm not crazy about it. However, I really enjoyed this book. I do want to put that out there because I understand. But it worked for me. It was just the kind of book that I was in the mood to read. That was The Swan's Daughter by Roshani Chokshi. Okay, this is where my reading started to go like a little bit downhill. I read The Gravewood by Kelly Andrews, which is a YA fantasy, but mostly more YA paranormal, honestly, but I think it's marketed as a YA fantasy. I don't really know how to feel about this one still, but most of my feelings are negative. So this is a post-apocalyptic setting where our main character, Shia, is living in a town that is cut off from the rest of the world by this forest called the Gravewood. The Gravewood forest is run by vampires. No one who enters the forest ever comes back. There is also this disease called roth. If you catch the roth, you lose all sense of self and you don't act like a human being anymore. So because they're cut off from the rest of the world, they are running out of resources and they don't really have any options. Shia wears hearing aids and she is quickly running out of her batteries and she has nowhere else to get them. So she is at a very desperate point, and so she braves the Gravewood forest to seek out the leader of the vampire to make a deal with him. The leader's name is Oliver Lysander. Shia makes a deal with Lysander where she willingly will give him her blood on a regular basis if he finds a way to get hearing aid batteries to her. Super atmospheric writing. Really loved that aspect of it. Everything else didn't work for me. It was one of those cases where it was like the concept was really great and the concept was fresh, but the execution was just not good, in my opinion. All of the characters were very flat to me. I couldn't connect with any of them. I couldn't connect with the romantic relationship and that development. It felt very flat to me. And then there was this attempt at adding a love triangle that also didn't work for me, which I get why she included it, because I think that it was trying to hit those early 2000s Twilight teen vampire book vibes, and you need to have a love triangle if you're gonna imitate that. I don't even think you can call it a love triangle, honestly. Like, there was just no depth. The dialogue also didn't work for me. I felt like I was reading a book, and that's kind of like the worst feeling because you just don't feel immersed in it at all and you feel like you're outside of the story. And that was my experience for mostly the second half of the book. The beginning was very interesting and then it just gradually started to go downhill for me. I was completely uninterested. In all honesty, I probably should have DNF'd it because it just didn't get better for me. Like at the halfway point, I still wasn't feeling it, but for some reason I did push through and finish it. Yeah, just didn't hit for me at all. I won't be reading the second book. That being said, I might be the problem because I feel like, and this is kind of like a crazy thing to say, I don't think I'm a vampire book person. I never had a Twilight phase. I was very much like a Hunger Games girl when everyone was obsessed with Twilight. And just recently, like in the last, I want to say year and a half, I read 3 vampire books, I think, including this one, and none of them I enjoyed. I think I DNF'd one of them. And I don't know if that's just because the books themselves didn't hit or if I'm just not a really big fan of vampires. Like maybe because I missed out on that phase when I was younger, it just doesn't do anything for me. So I might be the problem. Like I know a lot of people really liked this because it felt very nostalgic of those books like Twilight, and that might be why it didn't resonate with me. That was The Gravewood by Kelly Andrews. Okay, and then I had another miss, and this one actually makes me really sad because I really wanted to love it. The book is The Unnamed by M.S. Masood, which is an adult fantasy debut, and it is also indie published, I believe, but it is going to be traditionally published from what I've heard. I might be wrong, but I did hear that it was in the works of maybe being traditionally published, so that's cool. If you say the words debut Muslim author, I'm there, I'm sad, I'm sold. You don't really have to say anything else. Like obviously I was going to read this. A lot of people that I follow with, that I engage with, were singing high praises for it. Interestingly enough, this is pitched as a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, but I feel like that really sells it short because that aspect of the story felt very minimal to me. This is set in a kingdom called Vor. I hope I'm saying that right. Our main character is Reem. She is the princess who is set to inherit the throne from her father when his reign ends. A huge part of the plot centers on anti-colonialism, resistance, rebellion, oppression. There are systematically oppressed people who are living in this kingdom and who are subjugated on a daily basis. They are treated as second-class citizens, worse than second-class citizens. They are just treated absolutely horrendously. The kingdom calls them the Unnamed. So at the beginning of this book, Reem's father is in poor health. And this is happening at a time where there are talks of insurrection. So it's a very fragile time, fragile point for the kingdom. Nothing is healing her father, so she feels like she has no choice but to seek help. She ends up making a deal with an unnamed man who is like a healer in his community, and she basically asks him to heal her father in exchange for something that he wants. She accepts his terms and she strikes a deal with him. He heals her father, and he says that he will come to collect. The deal is also bloodbound in magic, and neither of them can harm each other while the deal is in effect. So it's not something that you can just break. She agrees to do what he asks, not knowing what his terms are. And when he eventually comes to collect, the price that he demands is much bigger than she ever anticipated. I want to start with some positives because I really do think that Masood's writing is very promising, with this being her debut novel and is indie published as well. There was a lot of care in like incorporating the themes of anti-colonialism, of oppression and resistance, which I really appreciated. It honestly kind of surprised me. However, I had a lot of issues with it. There was barely any world building, only tidbits and brief mentions of magic and history, and I was craving more. The romance didn't work for me at all. It promised a slow burn. I did not get a slow burn. They went from absolutely hating each other to having very strong feelings for each other so abruptly that it felt super jarring, especially considering their circumstances and their like positions in society. Because Reem's father is like the biggest perpetrator of the unnamed man's oppression and the oppression of his people. And I feel like that wasn't really explored as much as it maybe should have been, because I was like, I feel like that's a big contributor to how they feel about each other. I felt like it was disregarded a little bit. Like I felt like we could have went a lot deeper with that. I was just hoping for more emotional development. There really wasn't enough that convinced me of their relationship, and I was quite like indifferent towards them for the second half of the book, because it was just a little unbelievable to me. Like I was like, I don't really, it's happening so fast. And in addition to that, it ended with a trope that I don't like. I really don't like this trope, and I won't say what it is because it's a spoiler, but it is part of the ending. And I was like, well, I wasn't going to read the second book, but now I'm definitely not going to read the second book, because I just feel like this trope specifically is so rarely done well, and I didn't really like the book to begin with, so I won't be picking up the sequel. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it. It just wasn't for me. I mean, it seems like everyone has enjoyed it. I'm definitely the minority with this, because I think it has like a 4.5 average. But yeah, it was kind of a letdown for me. That was The Unnamed by M.S. Masood. The next book that I read was also a letdown. I read The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. It was simply okay. Like I finished it and I felt whelmed. Not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed. I was just like, that was a book. So you could definitely say it didn't live up to the expectations that I had. The Correspondent follows Sybil Van Antwerp, who is 77 years old. It is an epistolary story, so the entire book is written through letters and emails from Sybil, but also we get some responses from the people that she is writing to. Some of the letters date back to when Sybil is a little girl in the 1950s, but most of them tell a chronological story year by year. Sybil is someone who has lived a full life. She was a teacher, she was a lawyer, she is a mom, she is now a grandmother, so she has lived a very like fulfilling life. Letters are her primary form of communication, so every morning she writes letters, not just to her friends and family and the people she knows, but also to complete strangers. She writes letters to authors of books that she really loved. She writes letters to the president. She starts to get letters from someone that brings back some really painful memories in her past that are never quite processed. A lot of this book is about finding your way to forgiveness and the importance of human connection, not just with the people who you are close to, like your friends and family, but also to complete strangers online that you might not ever meet in person. The one main positive thing that I have to say about this book is that I did really like the epistolary storytelling, because I love to read letters. Other than that, I couldn't connect to the main character. I couldn't connect to the narrative. I was, quite frankly, very bored for the entire reading experience, honestly. I don't think there was a single moment where I was super engaged in it. I was just like, nah. I honestly should have DNF'd this. I think the reason why I did finish it is because it was kind of short. Like it wasn't a really long book, and I was already a good amount through it that I was like, I'll just stick it through the end. There are two main reasons why I think I didn't like this, or definitely like contributing factors. One of them being that I wasn't in the mood for a book like this. I read it because it was just immediately available to me at my skip the line loans at my library, and I am a really big mood reader. And the other reason is because my expectations were a bit too high. Honestly, like I just kept seeing rave review after rave review. When I finished it, I was like, this is a very standard book club read, and not in a good way. It really didn't wow me, and I don't know if that's because I had set my expectations really high because I had seen a lot of people review it. I don't know, like maybe if I was in a different mood at a different time, I might have enjoyed this a little bit more. But for now, it wasn't for me. So that was The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. Okay, and then I read a book that I actually really liked, and that was The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, which is an adult fantasy slash dystopian. This is the first in a 7-book adult fantasy series, so it is unfinished. This has literally been on my TBR for like a decade, and that is so crazy to say. I just never got to it until now. Also, I did read the revised version. So if you don't know, Samantha Shannon, the author, she published The Bone Season when I believe she was 18 or 19. The book was published in 2013 originally. 10 years later, she actually republished like revised versions of the first 3 books, I believe, and The Bone Season got the heaviest of the edits. And her reasoning was that she has grown so much as an author, and she really wanted to reflect that in a series that is still ongoing. And she expressed that the original versions felt like first drafts to her as she was re-going through them and rereading them. I read the revised version because the author has expressed that that is her preferred text, and honestly, I think it is really cool that she was able to do that. I think that's kind of rare in publishing from what I know. Super cool. Like, I'm sure she has grown a lot as an author. The book that you write at like 17, 18, 19 is going to be completely different than the book that you write at 30. The series is set in 2059, where Europe is ruled by this authoritarian regime called the Republic of Sion. The Republic has led this oppressive campaign against what they call the unnaturals in Europe, and the unnaturals are essentially clairvoyants who have various abilities. You can be a dream walker, you can have the ability to talk to the dead, you can have the ability to heal with ether. Like, there are all these different abilities that clairvoyants have, and their identities, like their existence, is criminalized under this regime. We follow Paige, who is a dream walker, which is a very rare and powerful clairvoyant, and she also works for a crime syndicate. She is arrested very early on and taken to the founders of the regime, who have like a very dangerous interest in her abilities. For the duration of the first book, while she's in their captivity, she is trying to figure out if there's anyone she can trust, how she's going to escape, and how she's going to survive. So I didn't know what to expect going into this, but I really liked it. It really surprised me how much I liked it. It's very dense. There's a lot of exposition, a ton of exposition, and there is just so much to learn because it is a new like fantasy world. There are all these terms. It was a bit confusing at the beginning. Normally books like this take me a very long time to read because they feel very exposition-y, but I zoomed through it. Once I got like the first 20%, I want to say, I was reading through it fairly quickly. It's confusing in a typical fantasy way, like you are trying to learn more about this world, about the magic system, about the lore, about the characters that you need to remember, and once you kind of get in the groove of that, it gets a lot easier. Ultimately though, this book is about resistance and rebellion and organizing a rebellion. I really liked Paige as our main character. She was really compelling. There's just something about this world and these characters that was really drawing me in. I couldn't put this book down, and I knew about halfway through I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to continue reading this. I'm kind of kicking myself for not getting to it sooner because I feel like I've been missing out. That was The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. Okay, now we're back to a book that kind of let me down, and that was Our Perfect Storm by Carley Fortune, which is a contemporary romance standalone. I want to preface this by saying that Carley's books are always a hit or miss for me. I either really like them or I really dislike them. And this one wasn't really either. It was kind of just in the middle, like it was just simply okay to me. So in this book, we follow Frankie and George, who have been best friends since they were little kids, childhood friends. They are both very headstrong. They've clashed a ton of times, but they always kind of find their way back to each other until now, where they're in a very weird place and they don't really know if they're going to be able to fix it. Like, they don't know where they stand. In addition to that, Frankie is set to be married and he is set to be her best man. But then Frankie's fiance dumps her on her wedding weekend, and instead of not going on her honeymoon, George suggests that she still goes on her honeymoon to Tofino, but with him instead. So they essentially have this week together to either fix their friendship or watch it all fall apart forever. So the highlight of this book for me was Carley's descriptive writing. I was reading it and I was like, I want to book a trip to Tofino, British Columbia right now. I felt like I was there. I think she does settings so well. I also really liked the love letter segments in this book, and that is because, again, I am a sucker for letters, especially love letters. I will eat them up. However, everything else didn't work for me. It was like the spark was missing and I was just reading words on paper. I couldn't get invested in their story, and frankly, Frankie as a character was honestly a little insufferable. Her thought process, how oblivious she was, instead of knowing that she loves George and just like knowingly pushing those feelings down because she doesn't want to ruin the friendship, she is like completely oblivious to the point where it's really infuriating, because it's like, how do you not know? She genuinely like doesn't come to the realization that she really loves him until near the end of the book. Like, it's not like she loves him and she's just like deflecting and she's like, I can't tell him, blah blah blah. It's not like that. Complete oblivion. Because she was so oblivious, she kept hurting George unintentionally. And to be clear, George had a lot of issues that he needed to sort out too. They both needed therapy. She just kept saying things that were not considerate of his feelings or like how he might feel. Because again, it's so obvious. It's so obvious that they both love each other, but she just refuses to even think about it like that. And you just want to shake her. And then of course you have the unavoidable third act in a romance book, but this one felt very, very silly. And maybe this is being nitpicky. I don't know if nitpicky is the right word. Specific, particular. This was mentioned in the very beginning of the book that they both got tattoos of each other's names as friends. And they acted like that was totally normal and that none of their romantic partners would be bothered by that. And there was like literally a quick passage where Frankie said something along the lines of, the people that I've been with, like the partners that I've had, weren't too thrilled to see his name tattooed on me. Well, I would assume so, because isn't your best friend a single straight man who you've been friends with since childhood? Like, I would be uncomfortable with that too. Like, hello? I just thought that was so funny. That just took me out a little bit. It was at the beginning of the book. I was like, oh, okay. That's doing a bit too much. That's doing a bit too much. I really do like friends to lovers. I really do, but only when it's done well. And I feel like most of the time it's done in a really frustrating way. And maybe friends to lovers as a trope is supposed to be frustrating, but the way that this one was executed, it just didn't work for me at all. Didn't really dislike it, but I didn't really like it and I didn't love it. So it's kind of, I'm going to use the word whelmed again. It was there, it was a book that I read, and I am probably never going to think about it again. That was Our Perfect Storm by Carley Fortune. Then I read Yesteryear by Clare Burke. If you have been in the book space online in any capacity, I'm sure you have heard of Yesteryear because everyone seems to be talking about it right now. I have been sitting with it for about a couple of weeks now, and I still don't know how I feel about it. Don't know if my feelings are mostly positive. Like, I feel like I'm in the in-between again. A lot of the books that I read this month are just like I'm not sure about this. But I feel like with Yesteryear, it's more of a positive I'm not sure about this. But I also can't say that with certainty, so I don't know. So my camera decided to overheat as I was speaking, and I had to take a little break and charge it a little bit, so hopefully it doesn't do that again. But if the lighting changes, it's because the sun is gonna set soon. But yeah, next read, Yesteryear. Yesteryear follows Natalie Miller, who is a traditional American Christian woman, and she is also a famous trad wife influencer with millions of followers. Everything in her life is completely manufactured to the T to fit the ideal Christian trad wife lifestyle, from her Instagram reels of her churning butter to her picture perfect nuclear family, which includes her cowboy farmer husband and her perfect 6 children, when in reality she has nannies working around the clock to take care of her kids. She doesn't do a single thing. She doesn't lift a finger. They've got tons of workers doing all the farm work. And on her socials, it looks like her family is doing everything. Like, they're like, oh, look, we're milking the cows and we're doing all this farm work and we're just such a happy family. But all of it is completely manufactured to sell this trad wife lifestyle as an aesthetic. And Natalie makes sure that her image is curated exactly how she wants it to be. But then all of a sudden she wakes up in 1855 as a real trad wife. So the aesthetic that she has been trying to sell, she ends up having to live it. It becomes her personal nightmare and her reality. So she finds herself like scrubbing and washing the laundry until her fingers bleed, having to make sourdough without using her KitchenAid appliances. She also has to figure out like how she ended up in 1855. Is she in some kind of reality show? How did she end up here? Or is she in a nightmare dream that's just never ending? You try to figure it out alongside Natalie, and then you're also jumping from where she is presently in 1855 to before she woke up in the past. So you get to see her like in her college years and then like right before it happens. Natalie as a character was so deeply unlikable, but that was the point, to be clear. That was the point. It was really fascinating to be inside her head and kind of funny sometimes, like kind of like a yellow face situation where the main character is just so insufferable and just like an overall awful person. She's quite miserable. She hates everyone in her life, including her own children. And her misery is like this paradox to what her life looks like online and the trad wife life that she's trying to sell. She did everything that was expected of like the perfect American Christian woman, and she's still miserable. This is such like a fascinating topic for me, especially in our current climate. So much to discuss, so much to think about. I really had to sit with it after I finished it because I was like, what the hell did I just read? Like, it was really just a crazy experience. I can't say if it was a good crazy experience or a bad crazy experience. It just was a bit of a wild read, and it was very, very addictive. So I did finish it. I read through it super, super fast. I also wasn't crazy about the ending. I really didn't like it. And I couldn't tell you how I expected it to end because I wasn't quite sure myself, like the direction that we were going. But there was just something about it that felt really lackluster. And I think it's one of those endings that you either like or you really dislike. I'm really not sure how I feel about it, but I think I have more positive than negative. It really made me think, and it was a wild experience from beginning to end. I totally get why this is getting so much buzz because even just like the premise alone is so interesting. Also, I learned that Caro is the co-host of a podcast called Diabolical Lies, which covers all things American politics and culture, including like American Christian fundamentalism, and I'm interested enough to give them a listen. I'll put the link in the description if anyone else is interested as well. It's called Diabolical Lies. Yeah, that was Yesteryear by Clare Burke. Okay, and then I read The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. I really liked it. I would say the first book is more of a huge setup, a lot of exposition about the Republic of Sion and kind of like the lore surrounding Sion and the founders of Sion. And this book is more about the crime syndicate that Paige, the main character, is a part of. So we get a lot of like lore and background and setup from that side of this story in the sequel. So necessary, definitely some necessary setup. I got through it a little bit slower than I got through the Bone season, but I did like it overall. I won't tell you too much about the plot because it spoils some of the events of the first book, but it essentially picks up right where the first book left off. I feel like at this point I have a stronger understanding of everything now, but I also feel like I need a little break from this world. Yeah, can't say much else because spoilers. So that was The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. Okay, so that was all the books that I actually read this month. I'm gonna talk about the one DNF that I had this month. And that was Seek the Traitor's Son by Veronica Roth, which is an adult fantasy dystopian. I haven't read any of Veronica's books since I read Allegiant at like 13. And it was so traumatizing to me that I just never prioritized reading her other books because I was too scared and I had trust issues. I'm sure this is something that a lot of people who read the Divergent series can relate to, but so many book creators were talking about Seek the Traitor's Son. A lot of creators that I really love were recommending it. And I was curious as to how much Veronica's writing has changed over the years, because again, I haven't read her since I was an early teenager. I'm actually kind of sad that I didn't really like this. I know I'm in the minority for this, but I'm gonna be so honest, this was not for me. It was not bad by any means. It was a lot more sci-fi, and I'm really not much of a sci-fi fantasy girl. Like, there are exceptions, but in this case, it was just too much for me. I just couldn't get into it. So I don't think I was in the mood for it. I thought the concept and the world was really interesting, but it all just felt a bit disjointed. There were some passages and scenes where I was really interested and engaged, but then the next chapter, I would be so bored, or I would just be completely disengaged in what was going on. And I couldn't get myself to like really care about these characters or the story. Like, it would just continuously be this back and forth of like, okay, wait, this is kind of interesting, but then it would lose me and I would be like, I don't really know what's going on and I don't know if I care. I'm also finding that I tend to enjoy character-driven stories a lot more than plot-driven stories, and this one I feel like is very plot-driven, so that is also a contributing factor. But my thing is if I am at the 50% mark, I was halfway through this book when I DNF'd it. If I'm at the 50% mark and I genuinely don't care about these characters and the story, I really don't see a point in me continuing it. I was reading this book and I was terrified that I was about to enter a reading slump. Like, it was making me feel like reading was a chore and I had to put it down. And I don't think I'm gonna come back to it. I think maybe if I didn't have a lot of misses this month, I might have pushed myself to finish it, but I pushed myself to finish several other books this month. I am interested in the alternate universe diversion book that's coming out in the fall though. I think I will try to read that and see how it goes, just because I used to really love the Divergent trilogy. So I am interested in reading that. Yeah. Only DNF of May, so I guess that's a good thing. I only DNF'd one book, The Traitor Son by Veronica Roth. If you read it and liked it, I'm really happy for you. I wish I could have loved it. I feel like the reason why this month was all over the place is because practically all of my library holds became available at the same time, and I found myself rushing to get through them and finish them. I felt this pressure to read everything before time ran out, and I know it's not that serious, and that's exactly what I don't want to do. In the beginning of the year, I set some reading goals, and one of my goals was not to rush through books like I typically do, and that's what I've been doing. Like this month especially, I feel like I've been pressured to read specific books that are on my holds list, but half of these books, maybe not half, but like a good quarter of them, I was not in the mood for this month. So I think going into June, I'm gonna try to be more mindful of my moods, and I do think that it's important to step out of your comfort zone, and it's important to step out of whatever bubble that you're in, whether you like fantasy or you like lit fic or whatever genre. But at the same time, I really don't want to pressure myself to read things that I'm not in the mood to read. And I feel like that's why this month was a bit lackluster for me. I really wish that I could do a monthly TBR. Like, I see so many booktubers do like monthly TBR videos. I can't do it. I am such a mood reader. Last month in April, I tried to read books in between the Shadowhunters books that I was reading, but because I like to read series all at once usually, I literally couldn't read anything else. Like, I was just going through book by book by book because that was what I was in the mood to read. Like, I was like, I want to read these books. And when I tried to read outside of that, it just wasn't working. So I think that's just how I am as a reader. I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing. Because I had a lot of books that I didn't love this month, I felt myself, even now, like I kind of feel myself almost about to go into a reading slump. And that really scares me. Like, I refuse. So what I told myself I was gonna do is I was going to read a book or a series that I really love. And I am currently rereading The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I think this is my third time. If you don't know, I absolutely adore the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. It's one of my all-time favorite trilogies. I love Holly Black's writing. I've been with her since the Spiderwick Chronicles. Love her rendition of The Fae. Jude Duarte is one of my all-time favorite female main characters. Like, I think about her all the time. She is so smart. She feels so deeply. Watching her move through this world that does everything it can to work against her and belittle her, and watching her rise to power in spite of that, it's just so good. It's so good. I'll never get sick of it. Don't even get me started on Carden. Like, they will literally always be famous to me. They are my OG enemies to lovers. I'm so excited for the upcoming novella coming out in November. Apparently we're getting like a short story of Carden's POV of this specific event that happens in the second book in the trilogy, and I'm literally gonna lose my mind. I'm so excited. Anyways, that's what I typically do when I feel I'm about to enter a reading slump. I will reread a book that I love or a series that I love because it just reminds me why I love reading so much. What I'm most looking forward to in June, one of my most anticipated releases of the year, The Ocean Would Paint Me Blue by Zulfa Kato, is publishing on June 2nd. So I'm super excited for that. And I also might get to Into the Blue by Emma Brody, which seems like a good summer read, and I've been in the mood for a good romance. A Young Will Remember by Eve J. Chung is also on my radar. I might get to that. That's a historical fiction, and I really loved the author's debut, Daughters of Shandong, so I'm super excited to read that. I am actually really proud of myself because I've been really consistent in filming these wrap-ups, and granted I combined my March and April, but that was for a specific reason. I feel myself getting more comfortable talking to the camera, and I'm really happy about that. And this is always something that I wanted to do, even just for fun. I don't really have a lot of people to talk about books with, so yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. Please let me know if you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, if you liked or disliked them, your thoughts on them overall, if there are any books that you recommend to me that you think I would enjoy. I really would love to hear from you, so please let me know. And of course, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.